1, 2, 3, 4. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Crazy Chester's Radio Hour. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Welcome to Crazy Chester. Crazy Chester's Radio Hour. Yeah, Crazy Chester's Radio Hour. Crazy Chester's Radio Hour.
Welcome to the Crazy Chester Radio Hour. I'm your host, Andreas Werner, and I'm super excited about today's episode. My guest is the one and only Tom Bones Malone, my great friend. He's one of the world's most recognizable horn players and one of a precious few who can play a wide array of both brass and woodwind instruments. He appeared in the Blues Brothers movie as a member of the legendary Blues Brothers band and was seen on TV as a member of the house bands for both Saturday Night Live and Late Night with David Letterman. He toured and recorded with the Band and Levon Helm and is featured in the Last Waltz movie. He's also recorded and performed with a who's who of world-class performers including Blood, Sweat and Tears, Frank Zappa, Gil Evans, Miles Davis, and Tina Turner, just to name a few. But without any further ado, let's get to my conversation with the great Tom Bones Malone. Bones, welcome to the Crazy Chester Radio Hour. Thank you so much for having me at your house. It's really great to be spending some time with you.
It's my pleasure to have you.
The way I usually do it is like kind of go back to the beginning. And growing up in Mississippi, I wonder what were your first impressions or first memories relating to music growing up?
Well, my dad was in the military, Navy pilot, Pearl Harbor survivor. We moved every year until I was 11 years old. When I was 11, he retired, and we bought a farm in near Summerall, Mississippi, 240-acre farm for $14,000 with 2 houses and a barn and a tractor. So the school we went to was grades 1 through 12, all in the same school. So I was in 6th grade there, and the marching band used to rehearse at the football field. It was right outside the window every afternoon in the fall, rehearsing to play the halftime at the football game on Friday night. So something about the sound of the band connected with my ear. So one day they said, anybody wants to be in the band, go to the band hall on Thursday night and bring your parents. So my older brother and I, 2 years older, and my parents, we showed up at the band hall, and the guy from the instrument company had the instruments laid out on the table. I picked up a trombone. I could almost play it. So my dad says, how much is it? And the guy tells him the price, and my dad says, we can't afford it. So we're walking out of the band hall, and the band director grabs me and my brother and said, the school has 2 sousaphones. He said, you guys can, you don't have to buy anything if you want to play tuba. So, okay. So my brother and I took the sousaphones home that summer, learned how to play them, and started playing in the marching band in the fall. The following year, we got a new band director, and he was a professional trombone player. He was the president of the union in Hattiesburg. His name was Bill Colston. And he saw me looking at his trombone one time in his office, and he said, you want to play that, don't you? And I said, yeah. And I told him my problem. So he loaned me his own personal trombone. It was an Olds recording with an F attachment. He showed me where the positions were, gave me a beginner book, and said, go home and learn how to play this. So I did. I was first chair in about 3 weeks. Well, the music wasn't that difficult, but so now I'm playing trombone and tuba. My little brother got a cornet. So when my little brother wasn't playing his cornet, I learned how to play that because I realized it was just a tuba, 2 octaves higher. So now I'm 14 and some kids come over to my house and they say, we're going to start a rock and roll band. You want in? I said, sure. I want to hang with the cats. I want to meet girls. So I got out my trombone and they looked at me like I was crazy. Now this is 1960. So I said, "What's up?" And they said, "You don't have trombones in rock and roll bands." And that was true in 1960. So I said, "Well, I want to be in the band. What do I have to do?" And they said, "You got to play saxophone." So my best friend in high school, Alan Sumrall, had an alto sax and a tenor sax with him that night. And he started showing me how to play tenor sax right then and there. And we worked out some little riffs, horn riffs on a few songs that night.
Okay.
So we continued to rehearse. A month later, we're playing our first gig with this band. It was at Sock Hop someplace. It paid $11 a man. So in the middle of one of the songs, the guitar player, lead singer of the band, leans over to me and says, "Play a solo." And I said, "What am I supposed to play?" He says, "Anything you want." So I jumped in there and I quickly realized that some notes sounded better than others when you're improvising. So wow, what key are we in? What scale should I be playing? And that's the way I started improvising. Went on to play with several local rock and roll bands in the Hattiesburg, Laurel area all the way during high school. Started college at University of Southern Mississippi as a music major. And I took a course called Music Theory 101. Now, I had started arranging music when I was 13 at home.
Okay, we'll hold that thought, but fairly early on, you must have realized that that's the path you want to take, because otherwise you would not go study music at college. So did you have a moment, or was it just like instant love? How did that transpire?
Well, I started playing trombone, and I got a record called The Persuasive Trombone of Irby Green. And the way this guy played the trombone was just knocked me right out of the park. I couldn't believe how good this guy sounded. I wanted to sound like him. So I bought this record, and it was the only record I had for about a year. But I just played along with the record and tried to imitate this guy. And I wanted to be Irby Green. And we had lived all over the place when my dad was in the military. Suddenly we're in South Mississippi, and I was not familiar with racism. When in the military we had black friends, we had Jewish friends, we had Asian friends, and suddenly we're in this, it's all white people. And I heard kids at school say racist comments, and I'd say, "Who told you that?" "Oh, my daddy." So I realized that this racism was just passed down from generation to generation since the Civil War. So anyway, I soon found out from playing with rock and roll bands that all my favorite musicians were black people, soul brothers and sisters, Aretha Franklin and James Brown and Little Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles, on and on like that, yeah. Sam and Dave, Rufus Thomas, Booker T and the MGs. So I realized that I wanted to get out of Mississippi, and I wanted to be like Irby Green. I wanted to move to New York and be a studio musician. And if I could play the same stuff as Irby Green, I should be able to do that. So I saw music as being my meal ticket to get out of Mississippi. And so I practiced 4 or 5 hours a day. And my mother would say, about 9 o'clock at night, she'd say, "Tommy, it's time to stop playing. Everybody wants to get some sleep." So sometimes I'd noodle around at the piano. Anyway, I was noodling around on the piano when I was 13. I heard a record on the radio, and I wanted to know, wow, well, how do those notes fit together and make it sound that way? So I analyzed it, and I wrote down the arrangement when I was 13. And I made about a 98 on it. I found the arrangement in the back of the music store, so I was able to check my homework.
Yeah.
So anyway, having started arranging when I was 13, I started college as a music major, and I took a course called Music Theory 101. And I answered all the questions for the first 2 weeks. And then
you had quite the head start going into that
yes.
chapter.
So the teacher takes me out in the hall and he says, "You know all this stuff already." He says, "You don't have to come to class anymore. You get an A." So I changed my major to psychology, and I found that quite interesting. But I continued to play music, and I was on a tuba scholarship for my first 2 years. And then I met Lou Marini at the Mobile Jazz Festival in the spring of 1967. I was with the Southern Miss Big Band. I wrote some charts, played some solos. Lou Marini was with the North Texas 1 o'clock band.
Yeah, that's the real deal.
Oh yeah. That was the best band in the United States, probably the world best, and the oldest jazz program in the world in college level. Lou Marini wrote some charts, played some solos, and we met each other and heard each other play and heard each other's arrangements. And he says, "Man, you should really transfer to North Texas next year." So I did, and Lou and I have been playing together ever since fall of 1967. I guess that's about 57 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, North Texas has a really good reputation for especially horn players.
Yes.
So, do you know a little bit about how that came to be? Were certain teachers, or was just the program really good? How did that get established to become such a force for horn players?
Well, it started there. Yeah, they were the first, 1947, same year I was born. They started the jazz program there. I'm trying to remember the name of all the people that started the jazz program there, but it just kept building, and word got around, and people would go to school there because they knew they could actually study jazz. They were in 1947. You could get a degree in jazz. No other school offered that.
Okay.
I was looking at North Texas. I was looking at the Berklee School of Music. But Berklee School of Music at the time was $3,000 a year just for tuition, let alone, apartment and food and everything. And North Texas State was $300 a semester or something like that, even for out of state. So, I went to North Texas, and I met all these people that changed the rest of my life there. Lou Marini, Gary Grant, Ed Soph, so many musicians have come out there. Most of the people you know now from North Texas are younger than I am, but they just keep developing great musicians, and I had great musical experiences there.
Our friend Steve Herman, the trumpet player with Muscle Shoals Horns, he went to North Texas.
That's right. Yeah.
A lot of guys.
Just another example of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Frank Green, the lead trumpet player with the Count Basie Orchestra, went to North Texas.
Who worked with you
at the Letterman show for the last 5 years. Yeah. Good friend of mine. Amazing trumpet player. Oh my God.
Yeah. So what's like the next major step in your evolution, like from North Texas to, I guess, what eventually led you to New York?
Well, I went on the road with Woody Herman in the summer of 1969, and then I went back to North Texas to work on a master's degree in psychology. I wanted to have a backup to be a shrink, a psychiatrist, and.
Who knew that some of those qualities probably came helpful in your musical journey?
Well,
dealing with people?
Degree in psychology comes in quite handy when you're dealing with musicians.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wide variety of personality types among musicians.
I don't know if I told you, but I studied social psychology.
Ah, wow.
University of Zurich.
Excellent. That's a good college.
Yeah.
It's a great school. Wow. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I went back to school, and I was playing the Fort Worth Fat Stock Show. It's the largest rodeo in the world, and it's an indoor rodeo. So I'm in the house band there playing, and I got called up for the draft. So the bulls and the bucking Broncos are kicking up dust and everything in this place, and so I started wheezing a little bit, and so I got called up for the draft, and I went for my draft physical, and I had an asthma attack in the middle of my physical. I thought I was going to go to the Army and go to Vietnam. Anyway, that happened, and after I cleared that out of my life, I called Bob Burgess in New York. I said, "Can I crash on your floor?" One day I just moved to New York, and Bob had a cheap apartment, and he went back on the road with Woody Herman shortly after I got there, and so I inherited this cheap apartment on Broadway, $67.50 a month in 1970. So I looked around for gigs and met people, and 1971, Lou Marini moves to New York, and he's playing with Doc Severinson's weekend band, Doc Severinsen was leading a big band at the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson in New York City. But we played in his weekend band that was every Saturday and Sunday. We went to the airport and flew someplace in the United States. Doc had a weekend band that was bass, piano, drums, guitar, and 6 horns. And he had 5 or 6 boy-girl dancer singers that were doing pop music of the day. And Doc would come out in the middle of the song and play a bravado trumpet solo, and then he'd go back and change outfits, for the next song. And we did, that was every weekend in 1971. During the year 1971, the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and Doc Severinsen Big Band moved to Los Angeles. Weekend band kept playing. We just went to the airport and still, kept on doing our same routine.
So was it all younger guys, or were you and Lou the youngest guy in the Severinsen weekend band?
Oh, in the weekend band, I guess we were probably the youngest guys in there, but Ed Shaughnessy was on drums, from the Johnny Carson show. Ross Tompkins on piano, John B. Williams on bass, guys from his regular band.
Oh, I see.
Horn section was 6 horns with Lou Marini, Lou Tabak, and Snooky Young.
Snooky
Young
All
was
right.
lead trumpet. Yeah. Snooky Young was lead trumpet with Fletcher Henderson in 1939. And now we're playing with him. And he was the nicest guy. He never missed a note. He just, oh my God, great role model for me. So we kept playing with that band. The Tonight Show moves to Los Angeles, and the weekend band keeps playing. We just go to the airport. It paid $250 a gig, too, which was a lot of money. It was a good paying gig in 1971, so, I could pay the rent. And so one night we found ourselves in Los Angeles as the guest music on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, the weekend band. And we played Only the Beginnings by Chicago. So I played a trombone solo on national TV. When the gig's over, we go back to the hotel in Burbank, and Lou Marini and I are roommates. So this jazz trumpet player named Sal Marquez comes over to the room. He was a jazz trumpet player with the North Texas 1 O'Clock Band in 67, 68 with Lou and myself. And we haven't seen him for, 4 years. So, Sal, what are you doing in LA? What's going on? He says, I'm playing with Frank Zappa's Grand Wazoo. I said, what's that? He says, it's a 20-piece all-instrumental band. He said, by the way, our tuba player, Howard Johnson, is moving back to New York. Do you know anybody that plays tuba? About that time, he trips over my tuba on the floor in the hotel room. I was playing tuba, bass trombone, and trombone with Doc's weekend band. So he looks down on the floor and he says, you play tuba, don't you, Tom? I said, yeah. He says, well, you want to play with Frank? I said, sure. So he calls up Frank Zappa from the hotel room phone. He says, yeah, Frank, I know this guy plays tuba. And then his face goes blank and he says, well, Frank, I've never heard him play the tuba. Tom, how do you sound on the tuba? So I picked up the tuba and played it for Frank over the telephone. I just improvised some stuff. And he hired me over the telephone.
Telephone audition.
The next day, yeah. A tuba over the telephone is kind of funny to me. But anyway.
You probably heard about half of the frequency range.
Well, I would go up into the upper range, which made it more easy to hear on the telephone. But anyway, so we go over to Frank's house the next day. And Frank says, Sal tells me you play some other instruments besides the tuba. I said, yes. So he says, well, give me a list. So I put down bass trombone, trumpet, flugelhorn, piccolo trumpet, tenor sax, flute, and piccolo. And I showed up for rehearsal 2 weeks later. Frank had 2 weeks of rehearsals. He had a rehearsal Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks in a row. I was at the Sands in Las Vegas with Doc Severinsen's band, weekend band. And so I commuted to LA 4 times in 2 weeks. I flew in and out of LA and back to Vegas to do the 2 shows every night. So anyway, I show up for the first rehearsal, and Frank has re-orchestrated all of his music. So I have a part on every instrument that was on the list.
Which meant you had to bring all the instruments.
Oh yeah. Well, I had a lot of stuff on the truck. So so I'm sight reading a piccolo trumpet solo in the rehearsal, and I'm sitting next to Malcolm McNabb. I had no idea who Malcolm McNabb was, but if you've ever been to the movies and heard a trumpet solo, it was probably Malcolm McNabb. He played on 400 movie scores in Los Angeles, and he was first trumpet in the Pasadena Symphony at the time. But he recorded the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto on the trumpet.
Oh, wow.
It's on YouTube. Check it out. Malcolm McNabb, Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto. It's with orchestra, produced by my college roommate Gary Grant. It's pretty amazing. He said he practiced it for 35 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did the 20-piece all instrumental Frank Zappa's Grand Wazoo tour of the United States and Europe. We played Berlin, played Rotterdam, we played all over the place, and
Did any of those
Boston
shows?
Symphony Hall,
Did any of
Hollywood
those,
Bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did any of those shows get recorded?
Boston Symphony Hall was for sure recorded. I have a tuba solo in that recording. Anyway, my friend Bruce Fowler from North Texas State was in the band too. Amazing trombone player, dear friend of mine. We did the 12-piece tour, United States and Europe. Then Frank cut the band down to 12 pieces, started putting some vocals back in the band. We did a 12-piece Mothers of Invention tour of the United States, and they cut the band down to 10 pieces, and we did a Mothers of Invention tour in the United States. And then we're almost at the end of 1972. Frank says, next tour is going to be a 6-piece band, and there's only going to be one horn, and that's going to be Bruce Fowler. So I said, cool. He says, Bruce tells me you play electric bass. I said, yes. So he said, you want to audition? I said, sure. So I went over to Frank's house one day, and Ralph Humphreys was on drums and George Duke on piano. Yeah. And so I thought I sounded pretty good. Played some hard music. 2 weeks go by, I hear nothing from Frank. I hear through the grapevine he's auditioning other bass players, guys that played with him before, guys that sing and play bass. So a couple of weeks go by, and I call up Frank, leave a message on his phone machine. Frank, it's Tom. Let me know what's going on. Another week goes by, nothing. I'm sitting around in LA with no gig. And I get a call from Lou Soloff in New York. He says, Chuck Winfield, our trumpet player, is leaving the band. Can you be in New York tomorrow?
That's Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears, yeah. So, can you be in New York tomorrow to be a trumpet player? I said, yes. So I gave away my car, checked all my stuff on the airplane, and boom, moved to New York. Day after I left, now my girlfriend stayed to pack up the rest of the stuff. The day after I left, Frank calls the house to say I had the job with Jean-Luc Ponty and George Duke. 3 tours of Europe and a tour of Japan for double the money that Blood, Sweat, and Tears was paying me. I was already in Dallas playing with Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So I recommended Tom Fowler, Bruce Fowler's brother, to play bass with Frank. And Frank loved him. He sounded great with Frank. He played with him for several years.
Yeah. And you made some good connections in like Lou Soloff and people like that in Blood, Sweat, and Tears.
Absolutely. I played with Blood, Sweat, and Tears. We did a European tour. We played all over the United States with Lou Marini and Dave Bargeron were the other 2 horn players in the band. And then Lou Soloff, at the end of 1973, Lou Soloff and I left the band and played together with Gil Evans for the next 15 years. We toured all over the place. We played the Miles Davis Gil Evans tour of Japan, 1983. We did the Miles Davis and Quincy Jones live in Montreux recording.
Montreux Jazz Festival.
Yeah, that was Miles' last recording. And we did, tours all over the place. We did a USO tour to the Far East, Hong Kong, Manila, Bangkok, Singapore, 1976. And we did at least 4 or 5 tours of all the major countries in Western Europe with Gil Evans. So wonderful experience, and hated to see Lou Soloff leave us.
Yeah. So for you, it's like we just touched on it a little bit, like your arranging journey. How has that involved? Because I'm sure like Gil Evans is kind of a little bit of a North Star when it comes to some of that too.
Well, Gil Evans taught me how to arrange in his style, and I did an album called Standards of Living, which is a 4-horn jazz album, 4 horns, bass, piano, drums.
You did that
with Gil Evans voicings. Yeah, he taught me how to arrange in his style, So he was a big influence on me. Anyway, so when I was back in New York, I had this cheap apartment, and my friend Hannibal Marvin Peterson calls me up from Denton, Texas. We went to school together. He was a jazz trumpet player and a soul singer, soul brother.
He has quite the name.
What's that?
That's an incredible name.
Oh, yeah. So he moves to New York, and he immediately starts playing with Rahsaan Roland Kirk, the jazz sax player that plays 3 saxophones at the same time. And he also started playing with Gil Evans. So one night he says, I got 2 gigs tonight. He says, the gig with Gil Evans doesn't pay anything. You want to sub for me on trumpet? I said, sure. So I went down to Westbeth. There was a big loft building in Greenwich Village that turned into a artist residence, subsidized artist residence. And that's where Gil Evans lived. It was Gil Evans' 60th birthday that night. And we played at the Westbeth Cabaret. Free gig. I met all these people that changed the rest of my life. Billy Harper, Lou Soloff, David Sanborn, David Bargeron, David Horowitz, Bruce Ditmas, Howard Johnson, and all these people. You know, I started playing with all these people, and when Saturday Night Live started in 1975, they asked Howard Johnson to put together a horn section. So Howard put me in there. Howard liked me because I played tuba, and I also played saxophone and trumpet and a bunch of instruments like that.
Yeah.
So, and he inspired me as a jazz tuba player. Yeah, he was just a big influence on my life.
So that was Howard, you, Lou, Alan Rubin, and Lou Delgado. Was that the first one?
Lou Delgado. That was the first horn section. Yeah. So and that was 1975. So I became the arranger of the show. I gave Howard Shore some arrangements that I had done for Zappa and Blood, Sweat and Tears, and so I became his arranger for the show from 1975 to 1985, and I was actually the music director from 81 to 85. So early April 1978, I'm called into a meeting as the arranger. I'm called into a meeting with 3 people: Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi, and myself. And they're developing these characters that wear sunglasses day and night. So there's just the 3 of us. So I arranged Rocket 88 by James Cotton, rehearsed the Saturday Night Live band, did it for Lorne Michaels, the producer, didn't make the show. So next week, John and Danny are still hot on this idea of the Blues Brothers. So I wrote an arrangement of Hey Bartender, rehearsed the Saturday Night Live band, did it for Lorne Michaels. Week number 2, shot us down. Lorne said, frankly, I don't see anything funny about the Blues Brothers. So week number 3, John and Danny gave up. They said, if Lorne doesn't like it, we're wasting our time for not getting on the show. So week number 3, we did nothing. Week number 3, Lorne comes out of read-through Wednesday about 3:15. He says, the show's 3 minutes short. What are we going to do? John and Danny jumped on and said, Lorne, the Blues Brothers. So Lorne said, we have nothing worthwhile to put in those 3 minutes. You guys might as well make fools of yourselves. He put us on. And he put us at the end of the show, so if the show ran long, he could cut us. I remember Steve Martin was the host of the show. But anyway, the show did not run long. We got on, and I suppose the rest is history. But it was this close to never happening.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And it became an iconic film. And I mean, not just a film, but like a whole franchise.
Oh, yeah. So now I'm music director in 1981 to 1985. Music director, contractor, arranger, and multi-instrumentalist musician on Saturday Night Live from 81 to 85. 1982, I get a call from my unit manager, Liz Anderson. When as the contractor for the union, I would fill out a contractor's report, send it down to Liz, and she would fill out the union contract and file it with the union. So Liz calls me up one day. She says, I got a new job. I'm the associate producer of the David Letterman show. I said, what's that? She says, you've never seen it. It comes on early in the morning. But we're changing the show to late night. And we're looking for a musical director to lead a 4-piece band and be a personality. Would you be interested? So she made me a financial offer. It was about 20% of what I was making at Saturday Night Live. So I politely declined the job, and I said, you should call this kid Paul Schaefer. He'll take care of it. Now, Paul was on Saturday Night Live for about the first 4 or 5 years, and then he went out to L.A. to be in a sitcom with Greg Avigan called A Year at the Top. Went about 5, 6 episodes. The network pulled the plug. Paul came back to New York about 2 weeks before this phone call. So I said, you should call this kid Paul Schaefer. I gave her Paul Schaefer's number. Never heard another word. A month later, I'm sitting up in my office writing a chart, and I had a network feed monitor in my office. And suddenly I hear a band playing on the network feed monitor, and I look over there, and it's Paul Schaefer, Steve Jordan, Will Lee, and Hiram Bullock. They were rehearsing, and they were right downstairs. Saturday Night Live was in Studio 8H, and they were in this new Letterman show was in 6H. So it was very convenient. I'd go down and see the guys, because I knew everybody in the band, and we'd go down there and hang for 5 minutes. And so Paul was nice enough to call me when the show moved to late night. Moved from NBC to CBS. He was nice enough to call me to be in the horn section. It was originally Bruce Kapler on tenor sax and me on trumpet, 2 horns for the first 4 years.
Because when they were at NBC, it was just a 4-piece. They didn't have any horns on it.
He didn't have any regular horns. Once in a while, they would bring in extra horns to, for if they had a guest artist that needed horns.
Yeah.
I remember I played with somebody when they needed horns one time, but now suddenly we have a regular horn section at CBS, and then after 4 years, they brought in a full-time trumpet player, and I was
Al Ches.
Al Ches, yeah, they brought him, and so I was more trombone, bari sax, whatever else they needed.
Yeah, and I guess Frank Green.
Frank Green came in about the last. Al Ches and Bruce Kapler left at the end of year 17, I think it was, and then or 16, and then so Bruce Kapler and Aaron Hike came in. Frank Green and came in on trumpet, and Aaron Hike came in on saxophone. Aaron Hike is this amazing saxophone player that sounds like Sanborn on the alto, sounds like Michael Brecker on the tenor, plays baritone, oboe, English horn, bass clarinet, E-flat clarinet, flute, piccolo, alto, and it plays like all the woodwinds superbly. Just an amazing musician.
How did they come into the band? How they got recommended for the gig?
How
Frank and
Aaron got well. We actually had auditions, and I recommended both of those guys. And when Frank came in, that was the end of the auditions. He just took over. And the same with Aaron Hike. We had all kinds of famous people come in on saxophone too. But anyway, this guy Aaron Hike is just an amazing talent.
Yeah, and they stayed through the end.
Yes.
To the end of the Letterman show, and
yes.
Then maybe around a year after you also made a record.
We made an album shortly after.
Well, you made a record before. The one I'm talking about is
the Paul Schaefer album was made shortly after the show ended, and we recorded it at Electric Lady Studios. I did the arrangements, and we put out the album. And then we went on tour. We did 13 tour dates all over the United States and Toronto too. And our drummer, we had Will Calhoun on drums because our drummer, Anton Fig, went out with Joe Bonamassa. He wasn't available. So, but we did 13 tour dates, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you did some Rock and Roll Hall of Fame shows too.
We were the house band for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for 22 years, and I got to play with some amazing people. I got to play with Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page at the same time.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, they wanted the horn. They wanted horns because they wanted to play Peter Gunn. So I gave them the chart, and so Jeff Beck gets confused at the end of the song. He says, "What are those chords?" I said, F13 to E major 9, and he says, "Don't give me any of that bullshit." That's kind of his arrogant personality, but he's actually a very nice guy, and he's a fine musician. I mean, sadly, he's not with us anymore, but. Anyway, I got to play with both of them at the same time. I got to play with Ringo Starr when he got inducted, and he was a great drummer and a nice guy. They brought in Paul McCartney to induct him. Paul says, we had this band in Liverpool our drummer wasn't working out. So we call this guy, he came over and he had a good beat. We call this other guy, he came over, he had a good beat. We call this other guy, he came over. Then this guy Ringo comes in, he's got 5-6 different beats. So I said, guys, I think we should go with Ringo.
Yeah, the rest is history.
Exactly.
So you mentioned the Standards of Living album you did, kind of inspired by Gil Evans.
Yes.
And then you also made one called Soul Bones for Malico. Can
Yes.
you tell me a little bit how that record came about?
Well, I wanted to do an instrumental album, and more along the lines of the Blues Brothers, rhythm and blues. Actually the Blues Brothers started out as Chicago blues, but then when we added, on my recommendation, we added Duck Dunn and Steve Cropper to the band, and then it changed to Chicago blues plus rhythm and blues,
soul, yeah.
like Memphis Sound, rhythm and blues. And so we one of the songs we recorded with the Blues Brothers was Groove Me, which was originally on Malico Records.
King Floyd.
Wolf
yeah.
Stevenson, yeah, right, that's right. King Floyd, yes. And so I wanted to do a record more in the R&B style of the Blues Brothers. So I hooked up with Wolf Stevenson, who's from a little town in Mississippi close to where I was raised. We didn't actually know each other, but a mutual friend hooked us up, and he says, why don't you come to Muscle Shoals and make a record? Wolf and Malico Records rented or owned, I think they bought Muscle Shoals Sound for 25 years.
Yeah.
And they had all this vintage Neve mixing boards and stuff in there. It was just an incredible studio. There was actually 2 studios there. There was a large room and a smaller room.
Yeah.
But so I went down there and I lived in the studio for 10 days, and I recorded with Roger Hawkins, David Hood, all these Jimmy Johnson,
Yeah.
all these legendary, and the Muscle Shoals horns, Harvey Thompson and Charles Rose, and some hotshot guys from Nashville, Jim Horn, Steve Patrick. Just ridiculous, great band. I also played on several other recordings, including Bobby Blue Bland's last album during those 10 days I was there, and Johnny Taylor's last album.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oh my God. Anyway, so I arranged and recorded all this stuff, co-produced with Wolf Stevenson, and he was also the engineer on the album. Yeah. That was a really fun time for me. I really enjoyed it.
Cool album.
Yeah.
And I guess that's how we met Muscle Shoals Horns.
That's right.
And I met you because I produced the Alabama Music Hall of Fame's induction show where they got inducted.
Yes.
And like, who can I get who would induct them? And then Charles and I, we thought of you, and so that's how we called you up.
And I was very honored to do that, and I was also very honored to play in the house band on that gig too.
That was fun.
Yeah. Nice guys. The whole band was great. Oh my God. And then you brought me down for the 40th anniversary of the Last Waltz, which was also, and I got to play Howard Johnson's chair, which was tuba and baritone sax. Very few people can play both of those instruments, but that was with the Muscle Shoals horns and the Muscle Shoals rhythm section, and it was a guest artist from Nashville singer-songwriter guest artist on every one of the songs that we did in that concert. That was also very memorable.
Yeah, a lot of those guys had some intersections that they had either a song recorded by Levon or play with them. So that was kind of family together,
Yes. Yeah, there was a lot of love in that concert.
So I guess we were playing that. We probably should talk a little bit about how you got on the radar of the band and how you ended up on the Last Waltz.
Oh, well, so I was at Saturday Night Live, and I started it there on October 10th, 1975, first show. And spring of 1976, the band comes on, and they play three songs. That was the routine on the hour-and-a-half show, is if you had a guest artist, they played 3 songs. So the band comes on and plays 3 songs, and the music director asked me to write horn arrangements for those 3 songs, which I did. And the guys in the band fell in love with me, and they took me on tour with them that summer, the summer of 1976. They added horns to the band and played some of my arrangements, and the band had done an album before with horns where Alan Toussaint wrote the arrangements. Do you remember the name of that album?
The album was called. It was recorded at the Academy of Music
That sounds right.
in New York, and the album is called Rock of Ages.
Rock of Ages, that's right. Yeah. So when it came time for the tour, Howard and I transcribed all those other arrangements by Alan Toussaint from that record, and that was the arrangements they were familiar with, and so that was the tour in 1976. So Thanksgiving 1976, we did a concert at, was it Winterland?
Winterland Ballroom.
Winterland Ballroom in San Francisco, and it was a live movie made, a documentary movie made of a live concert by Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
And at some points there was, they had these cameras that only went 15 minutes on a roll of film, so they had to change film and it was time consuming. Martin said that at one point there was only one camera rolling.
During Muddy Waters' performance.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So anyway, that was a great experience for me, playing in that horn section with Howard Johnson, and Jerry Hay was the lead trumpet player, and it was just playing with those guys was really amazing. Robbie Robinson recently passed away, and they're doing a big concert somewhere in LA in September to replay some of his music.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm involved in it at this point, but who knows? See what happens.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, because see what happens after Last Waltz, there were many more band-related gigs for you.
Yes.
I guess the next would have been Levon's RCO All-Star.
Yes, yeah. After the Last Waltz symbolized Robbie Robinson leaving the band. So the four people continued to play. Richard Manuel passed away, but
The early 80s.
Anyway, but the three guys continued to live in Woodstock, and I would go up there and write horn arrangements, and we made several more band albums produced by Aaron Hurwitz.
Yeah, Professor
Louis, yeah. And I used to play gigs with Professor Louis's band too. We did. We used to play with Rick Danko on the weekends with Garth Hudson, and played on Garth Hudson's album. And I actually did the arrangement of Stage Fright that was in the movie The Last Waltz. I actually did the horn arrangement for Rick Danko.
Okay.
Stage Fright. But anyway, so Levon, after Levon formed a band called Levon Helm and the RCO All Stars, and it was Paul Butterfield on harmonica, Dr. John on piano, Booker T. Jones from Booker T. and the MGs on organ, Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn on guitar and bass, and horn section was
Fred Carter
Jr. on guitar, right, from Nashville, and Alan Rubin, Lou Marini, myself, and Howard Johnson was a horn section. So I was a horn arranger for the band, and I did 2 albums. One of them was completely recorded at Levon's barn on Plockman Lane, Woodstock, and the other one recorded the rhythm tracks in Muscle Shoals. I think it was produced by Duck Dunn. He did the rhythm tracks in Muscle Shoals, and then I did the horns at Levon's barn. But two albums that are quite interesting, have a lot of good stuff on them.
Yeah, and you went on the road with him too.
We did a few gigs here and there.
There's one in New Orleans I know about.
Yes,
and then a New Year's Eve show that came out on record later.
Yes, and we also played Mardi Gras with Dr. John got us a gig with Mardi Gras at the Superdome in New Orleans. Yeah, that was that's on YouTube also, I believe. Memorable, and we did a Japan tour with that band too.
All right.
Yeah. A lot of great memories with Levon. Nicest guy.
Is you playing with Cropper and Dunn, is that what made you recommend them to Belushi and Aykroyd?
That was the reason, because I had played with them with Levon Helm and the RCO All Stars, and I knew that they were the right people for the band. Yeah. And it, as I said before, it changed the direction of the band from just Chicago blues to Memphis R&B also. Our first hit single was Soul Man.
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing about the Blues Brothers, it just introduced a whole new generation to the great R&B records, and blues too.
That's true. I've heard this from a lot of people, especially on Facebook. They say the Blues Brothers introduced us to rhythm and blues. We never, that stuff was, we didn't grow up with that like I did. You know, so
it
because
played a
younger
role
people
in
say,
my case too,
yes.
for sure.
Yeah,
And
people
having
your
Ray,
age, right?
Ray and Aretha and Cab Calloway
Yeah.
and James Brown
Oh,
in
yeah.
it. You know, that was in one movie. You see all your favorite performers.
Absolutely, and you know, all those people are gone, so it's you know, it gives them keeps them alive in people's minds.
Yeah. So you did the movie, I believe, in '80, and then unfortunately John Belushi passed away.
In '82.
But towards the end of the decade, you decided to reform the band. What led to kind of creating the original Blues Brothers band?
Well, 1988, I got a license from Judy and Dan Aykroyd. Judy Belushi, meaning John Belushi's widow. I made a royalty agreement with them and formed a band called the Blues Brothers Band, and it has 6 original members, 6 original musicians: Alan Rubin, Lou Marini, myself, Duck Dunn, Steve Cropper, and Matt Guitar Murphy. And we got Eddie Floyd to be the lead singer, and also Larry Thurston, who had been the lead singer with Matt Guitar Murphy's road band. So we got Danny Gottlieb to play drums, got Leon Pendarvis to play organ, and I made a deal with a booking agent in Paris named Raymond Gonzalez. First year, 1988, he booked $1 million worth of gigs for us. We did 2.5-week tour of Europe, including all the major jazz festivals: North Sea, Vienne, Montreux, Molde, Umbria, Stuttgart, Pori.
All right.
All the biggest jazz festivals in Europe, and so it was just a really fun thing. 88, 89, 90. Anyway, I did that until David Letterman show came up in '93. So I stopped going to Europe on a regular basis like that. But the guys in the band kept going. The other guys in the band kept it going.
Did you recommend Bert Johnson to pick your chair?
Yes, Bert Johnson's a dear friend of mine from Alabama. Great player, nicest guy you'll ever meet. Yeah.
And the Montreux show became a live album.
He's probably not far from Muscle Shoals, actually. He's down there around Birmingham, University of Alabama. Yeah. He's connected with all those people too.
Okay. And the gig at Montreux became a live album.
I produced a live album and a live video of that concert.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was good, and it's great to see Eddie Floyd,
Oh, yeah.
doing all those
amazing
hits with you
dear,
guys.
dear friend of mine, amazing talent still.
Yeah. So I guess you were with them going into the 90s, and then about a decade later, or maybe less than it, they worked on the Blues Brothers sequel.
Right, Blues Brothers 2000 movie.
And that brought you back into the fold.
Yes.
So what was your role in that? I mean, besides being an actor.
I did arrangements and played in the band. Pretty much the same as in the first movie.
Yeah, and they brought everybody back. That was great.
Everybody was
still alive.
Everybody was still alive. Yes. B.B. King was in that movie, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. It's again like Dr. John, B.B. King. Then Aretha came back.
Yeah.
Cab Calloway had passed away.
Yeah, he was gone.
But he's like, at least kind of they reference his characters in it too. Yeah. I know it was not nearly as successful and crowd breaking as the first one, but for me to see a reunion, it's like a family reunion for me of all my R&B heroes.
I just did a gig in San Diego with Calloway Brooks, who is the grandson of Cab Calloway, and he's doing the Cab Calloway show now with a big band.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and
so same kind of aesthetic and.
Oh yeah, and it was a great band too. Oh my God, yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah,
fun to see that music stay alive.
Yeah, it was fun in the first movie where like when Cap goes up and he introduces the band to kind of kill some time before the Blues Brothers arrive.
Right. Oh yeah.
And then the whole set changes and you all like dressed up like a Cab Calloway show.
Yeah.
I loved it out of nowhere.
Oh yeah. We were in that interior was in the Hollywood Palladium on is it Sunset Boulevard or Hollywood? It's Hollywood Boulevard, I think. And we were in there for a week, all day. They had the audience had 600 Screen Actors Guild audience members and 1,600 people from the unemployment line. They gave them like $50 in lunch. Yeah, that's the way we filled up the whole place with the audience. Yeah, that was a busy week.
Yeah, I bet. And I know you still occasionally go out with Dan Aykroyd. It's usually him and Jim Belushi.
I'm still playing with them now. We're playing at Joliet at the prison on August 17th. That's about 10 days from now. I played the grand opening with them in August 2022. The prison in Joliet is the beginning of the Blues Brothers movie and the end of the Blues Brothers movie with Jailhouse Rock. But it was built in 1858 by the prisoners out of this amazing stone. Looks like a castle. And 2002, the prison was decommissioned. A lot of people in Joliet wanted to tear it down. They wanted to forget about the prison, because that was the whole reputation of Joliet. But Judy Belushi jumped in there, and they're turning it into a Blues Brothers museum. The grand opening was August 2022 that I played with. There was 7,000 people in the courtyard for the concert.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, so we're doing another big concert coming up in about 10 days there. So it's going to be great.
Yeah. And you've done some original Blues Brothers band shows or tours. I know, like, one year you were in Switzerland not too long ago.
Yes.
With them.
Yes.
And they made kind of one more album, I think it's called the Bluest Shade Before Black or something like that.
Something like that.
You played on
Yeah.
that too.
But Lou Marini still does this a Blues Brothers band. He calls it the original Blues Brothers band, but he's basically the only original member in it. But last summer I did a few gigs with them, so there was 2 original members in the band.
Yeah.
But it's a good band, and they're keeping that music alive. We played the Locarno Film Festival, and we played a couple of gigs in Spain and a few gigs in Italy, particularly down on the end of the boot.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great. So, we covered a lot of the important arcs of your career. Now, personally for you, what are some of your, gigs or records or experiences you don't get to talk about a lot or don't get asked about, but they mean a lot to you?
Well, when I was just getting out of North Texas, when I was at North Texas State, I was a contractor for all the big bands that would come through. Back then, kind of the end of the big band era, but like Lee Castle and the Tommy Dorsey Band, they'd have a one-nighter in Houston. And I didn't have a steady band, so he'd call me up. I'd get a full big band of musicians to drive to Houston, 350 miles. We'd sight read music for 4 hours, and he'd tell the customers that we were a road band. We played in Dallas last night, and we're playing in Corpus Christi tomorrow night, and make up a story like that. But so I would do that for the Tommy Dorsey Band, the Glenn Miller Band, and all the other ghost bands of the original big bands. So somebody gave the people at Motown my number, and so I contracted a horn section for a 3-night tour with the Temptations, the Supremes, Gladys Knight, and the Pips.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was Dallas, Shreveport, and Houston. So I got 11 or 12 piece horn section together for that tour. So they brought their rhythm section from Detroit. Ridiculous. And it was the original 5 Temptations and the original Supremes. And anyway, so that was a successful tour. So the next one they gave me was Little Stevie Wonder in El Paso and Albuquerque. They brought a rhythm section from Detroit, and I got a horn section. So Little Stevie Wonder is 16 years old. And at the time, he was only recording music that was written by the Motown staff writers.
Yeah.
Anyway, so for whatever reason, he took me in as a friend. And he says, I'm writing my own songs, man. Do you want to check some of it out? And he had a nice pair of headphones and a portable cassette player. I said, sure. So I listened to this music, and it blew my mind. It was so good. I said, who played on this? He said, I played everything: drums, bass, guitar, organ, piano, and all the vocals. It totally blew my mind. And I got to play with Stevie on many occasions after that. Saturday Night Live, Letterman show. One concert was a edited TV show called Save the Music. It was a fundraiser to buy instruments for kids that couldn't afford them. And so we're recording This Christmas. And Stevie's the keyboard player. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't the artist on this particular song. There was some girl singer. Anyway, so we're in the studio doing this pre-record, and the director says, cut, says, band, take a break, but stay in place, don't go anywhere. Stevie starts playing giant steps on the piano, on the keyboard. Da 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 da. And then he starts improvising on it, and he's all over it. It's just like ridiculous. And middle of his solo, the director says, cut, let's go back to work. Most people think of Stevie Wonder as just being an R&B kind of, but he can play anything. He's an amazing musician whose talents, have still yet to be discovered and publicized. But he always remembers me. I say, Stevie is Tom, the trumpet player from Albuquerque. And he's like, oh man, what's happening? How you doing? Last time I saw him, he was on the Letterman show in 2015. He did I Wish. I write a horn track for him. So I ran into him in the elevator, and I said, Stevie, it's Tom, the trumpet player from Albuquerque. And he says, it's nice to see you.
Yeah, he can pull that one off. Yeah, I know it's pretty remarkable. We could go on for hours and hours and hours, but just one last thing I kind of want to touch on a little bit is the Rainforest benefit concerts that you did with Sting and Sting's wife, Judy Stone.
Yes. I did these every year or every 2 years for over 20 years. And Michael Walden was always the music director. Anyway, he would bring in Jim Horn as his horn guy, and so Jim recommended me. We're old friends. And so I did that every year with all kinds of great musicians. And Elton John was always there. James Taylor, always there. And just a long list of big famous stars. Last one we did, Bruce Springsteen, John Mellencamp, Bob Geldof, the Eurythmics, Ricky Martin, Run DMC. I mean, just, everybody wants to be on, and of course Sting, let's not leave him out. Yeah. So, those were always great gigs, and I got to write some charts for those too.
It's incredible.
It was usually at Carnegie Hall. The last one we did was, because they booked it late, it was at the Beacon Theater. But it was actually, 3,500 seats, so it didn't hurt anybody. The front row in Carnegie Hall was $100,000 a seat, and they always sold out. Yeah. The Rainforest benefit was started by Trudy, Sting's wife, to buy land in the rainforest,
so it doesn't
to keep it from being cut. Yeah, for the world ecology.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was a great cause, and sadly those concerts were done, but a lot of great memories.
Yeah. One thing I love about you, obviously, besides your immense talent and all your, your great resume, but you're super humble and personable and a great friend. So when I call you, hey, would you mind playing some horns on this festival gig I'm putting together in Canada? He said, yeah, I don't have anything going on those 3 days. Let's do it. That's sure. What I love. And I think it was good stuff. I mean, it's not the Elton Johns and the Bruce Springsteens, but we had a good time. And,
absolutely.
It was a good band, and you got to play, and he's featured soloist, and I hope we get to do more of that and maybe go into the studio and do something.
Absolutely. Right now, my current project is I'm recording a big band album by myself. I play all the instruments, so,
you share
so why not?
That with me.
I've got about I've got 7 songs finished right now, and I've got several in progress. So that's yet to be finished up, but I think people will enjoy that.
Oh,
it's not old classic.
You shared your version of Michael Jackson's Billie Jean with me, and that was just incredible.
Oh, I'm glad you liked that one.
Yeah,
I enjoyed doing that one.
Yeah.
Did I send you Hard to Handle yet?
No, I
have to find that and send it to you.
That's one of my favorite.
One of my favorite songs too. Yeah, Otis Redding is one of my favorite artists of all time.
Yeah, and we've been talking for an hour plus probably. We have not even mentioned that you're one of the few people who can play reeds, horns, and brass. You know, it's like you just casually mentioned in the beginning. Yeah, and the guy had a tenor sax, so I picked up a tenor sax. Regular people don't know that it doesn't quite work like that for most individuals. You know? You just have this gift to just kind of be able to adapt and play those so great. But I only know you and Howard Johnson as the two who can actually do it.
Well, there's a guy named James Morrison in Australia. Who plays
He's
all
really known for his trumpet playing, right?
Yeah, but he's also a great trombone player, a great saxophone player, and he has his own music school now, his own jazz school in Australia. So, you know, kids have a chance to learn something from his genius. Wow.
But still, you're like, it's a select few, you know. I mean, out of 1,000 horn players, maybe one, probably not even.
Well, my band director in high school, the one who started me off on the trombone, he said, you shouldn't be playing those other instruments.
Why do they ruin your embouchures?
Well, but I was playing with rock and roll bands where I was, I was playing trumpet and tenor sax and, other stuff besides trombone. But, so I didn't tell him everything. I just kind of kept that secret. You know, he didn't show up at those gigs. But anyway, sometimes you have to find your own path in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yours has been incredible. And thank you so much for sharing all of it with me today. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. You're a dear friend of mine, and it's a pleasure to talk with you anytime, anywhere.
All right. Well, thank you so much, and all the best of luck to you. And let's keep playing.
And continued success to you as well.
Thank you. And that was my conversation with the great Tom Bones Malone. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to subscribe to and like the Crazy Chester Radio Hour wherever you're listening to podcasts. And you may also be interested in some of our past episodes featuring conversation with some of the great musicians, songwriters, and producers of our time. That's it for today. Thanks for listening, and I hope to catch you next time. Crazy Chester Radio Hour was created and produced by me, Andreas Werner, producer, songwriter, composer with a Muscle Shoals heart. The theme song is performed by Jimmy Hall of Wet Willie and the Funky Chester Rhythm Section. It was recorded at Creative Workshop Studio in Nashville, Tennessee. You can find out more about the podcast and myself at crazychesterrecords.com or on Instagram at crazychesterrecords.